Ever since being put in charge of the Detroit Lions, Brad Holmes as the GM has done an absolutely exemplary job in managing and building the roster. However, though, that does not mean he is infallible, and we're going to talk about it in this episode, folks. Stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10-5 end zone touchdown Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions fans, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. My friends, this is going to be an episode that is kind of a little bit painful for me to make, because I'm going to tell you this right now. When it comes to Brad Holmes, when it comes to Dan Campbell, I absolutely love what these guys have done. I think they are the best head coach, GM combo that the Lions have ever had, and I think respectfully they're the best at their positions that the Lions have ever had as far as head coach and GM, respectfully. And for Brad Holmes, it's not even a contest. He is the best GM in Detroit Lions history, period, end of discussion. Because if you think about it, Holmes has conquered the near insurmountable task of resurrecting the Detroit Lions and turning them into a top 5 ball club. And, just take a look at what Holmes has done. Over the last 4 off seasons, he's been an absolute wizard with his draft strategy, finding ways to get players that either, 1, we were not expected to get, 2, making absolutely awesome trades to find ways to get players that, we didn't think we would have a chance to get, but then all of a sudden we're the ones drafting them. And then once you step out of his draft success, he's also been very good in free agency, finding good value deals, making sure that he finds guys that, are not necessarily going to break the bank, but they're good players. And you know what? There's a reason why Brad Holmes gets the accolades that he does. There's a reason why Brad Holmes is considered one of the best GMs in the NFL right now. However, though, just because Brad Holmes has all these accomplishments, just because Brad Holmes has all this success, it doesn't mean he doesn't have chinks in his armor. It doesn't mean that he does not have areas where he has not been exactly the best at. And let's understand this here. I'm not trying to make this episode to necessarily attack Brad Holmes. I'm not even making this episode to say that I'm upset per se. More than anything, let me put it this way. As a kid, you always had heroes. Like you would think about people, whether it was guy or girl, whatever the case was, and you'd call them their hero. Or call them your hero, pardon me. And the thing of the matter is that when it comes to heroes, we always look at them with a kind of like a perfection persona. Like they can't do anything wrong, like they're just absolutely the greatest thing in whatever. But it's like once you start actually taking a look at the entirety of the situation, you start peeling back the layers a little bit, you find out that perfect persona that they have is not exactly close to reality. They are good, but they have their flaws like everybody else. And when we take a look at Brad Holmes, the good things that he's done for the Detroit Lions is, well, let's call it for what it is. He's nearly addressed every single position in terms of starting quality talent. And on top of that, a lot of the positions that we have, I would say, have top 10, top 5, if not best talent at their positions. And there's a lot of such, examples of this, such as Jared Goff, Jahmyr Gibbs, freaking Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta, Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, Aiden Hutchinson. You just talk about it. Brad Holmes has done an excellent job of managing the roster and bringing in top-end quality talent. And it's not even just the talent that's at the starting level. The depth that the Lions have now is not too shabby neither. Now, could it be better? Absolutely. But considering the fact of what the Lions were when Holmes and Campbell took over to now, this roster is the most complete that the Lions have had in decades. And it's an awesome roster. But again, There are two specific areas in this roster that, for whatever reason, it seems like Brad Holmes has either overlooked or he has tried to fix the position, he's tried to find a solution, but all he's been doing is, in essence, putting a damn Band-Aid on it. And everybody already knows the two positions that I'm talking about. It's the backup quarterback position, and it's the starting edge rusher opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. Now, I know other people could probably throw in other positions into this kind of conversation, but those are the ones that are by far and in large the most prominent glaring holes that are in this roster and have been now for quite some time. And again, think about it this way, folks. Why is this, a poor reflection, if you will, on Holmes' record as a GM? Well, let's think about this for a second, folks. When we take a look at what the Lions are currently trying to do right now, they have Super Bowl aspirations. Everybody and their brother knows it. The Lions are going for a Super Bowl. That is their goal. That is their dream. That is their aspiration. And I've said it before. I'll say it again. And I will probably say it again in the future. When you're going for a Super Bowl, nearly everything has to break your way. Everything has to damn well go your way. It has to be damn near perfect. And that includes having a solid roster. And again, while the Lions do have a solid roster in 95% of almost every area, these two positions that Brad Holmes has failed to address are concerning. And we have to think about why they're concerning. Let's first and foremost talk about the Lions' past history here, shall we? Let's just go back to last year for a brief second. Last year, the Lions had the best pressure defense in the entirety of the NFL. Everybody knows that. We had the most pressures on quarterbacks, and we had the highest pressure rate on quarterbacks. That's good. The problem with it is that 33% of the Lions' pressures came from one sole individual, and that was Aiden Hutchinson. According to Pro Football Reference, the Lions had 187 pressures on quarterbacks last year. Aiden Hutchinson accounted for 62 of those on his own. He's accounting for a third of the team's pressures all by himself. While that's good for Aiden Hutchinson, and that shows how dominant of a player he is, the problem is he doesn't have anybody opposite on the other side to help him out. Again, it's nice to have a guy that can realistically do what Aiden Hutchinson does. That's great. But we need somebody opposite of him to help shoulder the load. It can't just all be Hutchinson's problem. And that's just for the edge rushing position. Now let's talk about the backup quarterback position, which, oh good Lord. For Lions fans, the backup quarterback position has been a very, very bad history. Because for the last, the last decent backup quarterback the Lions had was Sean Hill. Think about that. That's the last decent one we realistically had. And that was a long, long time ago. And to be entirely honest, the Lions have actually been blessed for the most part by having very durable quarterbacks. We had Stafford, and Stafford was very, very durable for a long time. Took him a little while to get into that because the first couple of years he was a bit of a China doll, but after that he settled into becoming one of the Iron Men of the league. And now we've got Jared Goff, and Jared Goff is also a very reliable, very durable quarterback. But the problem is that when those guys have gone out due to either injury or illness, because both of them have missed games with the Lions due to one or the other, the backup quarterbacks that we have simply not done good. It's been absolutely a disaster. Since 2009, think about this, folks. This is going to really blow your eye. This is going to really blow your minds. Since 2009, whenever Stafford or Goff has gone out with an injury or an illness and the backup quarterbacks have had to come in and play, the Lions have a 5-17 record with backup quarterbacks. That is a .227 win percentage. That is horrid. And think about it. A .227 win percentage, and you have a team that's trying to gun for a Super Bowl. No, that is not going to cut the mustard. That is not even close to fitting the standard. And again, you have to think about it why it isn't for the standard. Because, like I've said, the Lions have Super Bowl aspirations. And having a competent backup quarterback is a must. If you don't believe me, take a look at some of the quarterbacks that have won as backups when they went to the Super Bowl. Ask Tom Brady in 2001 when he replaced Drew Bledsoe. Ask Kurt Warner in 1999 when he replaced Trent Green. Ask Jim Plunkett in 1980 and 1983 when he came in and provided relief for the Raiders to win their Super Bowls. Ask Jeff Hostetler in 1990 when he replaced Phil Simms after he had a season-ending injury. And ask Nick Foles in 2017 when he replaced Carson Wentz. All of those guys went and won the Super Bowl as backup quarterbacks. So yeah, having a competent backup quarterback is a must. And the fact of the matter is Brad Holmes has failed to address this problem. He's failed to address this position for the majority of his time with the Detroit Lions. Because let's think about it. Ever since Brad Holmes has been in charge of the Detroit Lions, the backup quarterback position has been an absolute mess. Think about it. We've had David Blau, we've had Tim Boyle, and we've had Nate Sudfeld. Those are the guys that we've seen the most as the backup quarterbacks, and they're all terrible, every single damn one of them. The only good backup quarterback that we've had was Teddy Bridgewater, and we only had him for one season. And then we have Hendon Hooker, which everyone is projecting that he's going to be good. Everybody is expecting that he is going to be good. But right now, there's still a bit of a question mark surrounding him. So it's kind of like, hey, wait and see. But the fact of the matter is that for the majority of the time that Holmes has been in charge, he has not addressed the backup quarterback position. And there's a reason, actually not a reason, there is a twofold reason why this has been a problem and why it is an issue. First and foremost, let's think about this. Go back to the beginning of this offseason. Nate Sudfeld had already played out his entire contract. In fact, the Lions had put him on IR because of the fact that he'd gotten injured, so he pretty much finished his entire contract with the Lions on injured reserve. So the Lions did not have to bring him back. But what happened? Brad Holmes and the Lions, they signed him to a one-year deal. And I'm telling you this right now, when that deal was announced, a whole bunch of Lions fans absolutely cried bloody murder because they could not believe that Brad Holmes would bring him back. I didn't cry bloody murder, but it was definitely a head scratcher because I was like, why are you bringing back Nate Sudfeld? He has not done anything for us of any value. And the reason why it made absolutely no sense to bring back Nate Sudfeld is go back to the free agency period that we just got done this offseason. There were several backup quality quarterbacks that were available in the free agent market that were not that much more expensive than what the Lions paid for freaking Nate Sudfeld. Because we paid like almost $1.2 million over a one-year deal to get Nate Sudfeld back. Think about this, folks. Mason Rudolph, he got signed to a one-year $2.8 million deal. I can sure as hell live with that. Marcus Mariota, a one-year $6 million deal. I can live with that. Joe Flacco, who freaking had a great run with the Browns last year, a one-year $4.5 million contract. I can live with all of those contracts. So it's like, Brad Holmes, why in the hell would you go back out and re-sign Nate Sudfeld when you have these guys that have better experience, they have better overall talent, and could be a better backup quarterback than Nate Sudfeld, and all you had to do was spend just a little bit more money? That to me just doesn't make any sense. And that is a big reason why a lot of Lions fans have looked at Brad Holmes this offseason. It's like, okay, we like the fact of the things that you did in the draft. We like what you've done in other areas. But why have you not addressed these problems? Because again, it's not just the backup quarterback position. Like I said, again, you have to think about it also in terms of the starter, the edge rushing position here, because the edge rushing conundrum, that has primarily been more of a recent problem. Let's call it for what it is. Aiden Hutchinson got drafted in the 2022 draft. So it's like, okay, we got Hutchinson there. He was a rookie. And then we were still trying to figure out who we were going to put opposite of him. And it seemed like, again, heavy emphasis on the seemed like, that at the end of that year when James Houston popped onto the scene, that, hey, maybe we might have found two edge rushers in the same draft. One in the first round, one in the sixth round. The problem is that did not turn out to be the case because much of the promise, much of the luster has fallen off of James Houston. Again, at this point, everybody kind of looks at James Houston and it's like, hey, you know what? He was kind of like a one-hit wonder. He had 8 games where he absolutely went off, but ever since then, he has kind of largely fallen off the radar. He's been dealing with injuries. He's dealing with another injury, and it just does not seem like he has the same sort of, like, pep in his step that he used to have. And it's like, okay, we're kind of now back to the drawing board, with who do we figure out to go opposite of Aiden Hutchinson. And again, much like I talked about with the edge rushing position, or the quarterback position, there were guys in the free agency period this offseason that Brad Holmes could have gone out and gotten better than Marcus Davenport, because that was the main guy he got, which we signed to a 1-year, $6.5 million deal. And I know a lot of Lions fans, they wanted Danielle Hunter. I wanted Danielle Hunter. Danielle Hunter would have been awesome to get, but it seems like the Lions were not wanting to spend the kind of money that Danielle Hunter was wanting. So I was like, okay, let's find something that's a little bit closer to what we signed Marcus Davenport per year, because we signed him to a $6.5 million contract over 1 year. So I was like, okay, if it's within like $10 million or less, that's around the same amount of money. Could have had Jadeveon Clowney, who signed for a 2-year, $20 million deal. Could have had Leonard Floyd, who signed for a 2-year, $20 million deal. Could have had A.J. Epinesa, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, who signed for a 2-year, $12 million deal. All of those guys are better options than Davenport is in terms of not only talent, but also in terms of statistical production and in terms of health parameters, because they don't have the same, injury history that he does. And they're roughly making only a couple million more per year. So it's like, why not go after him? Why would you go after Davenport? I know Davenport has ties to, the Saints and obviously Aaron Glenn and Dan Campbell, but it's like, if you're going for a Super Bowl, wouldn't you want to get the best possible talent you could get your hands on that also works within, the scheme that you have? Now, again, that's part of the reason why I have to play devil's advocate here when it comes to having this conversation, because we have to understand something here. While us Lions fans would like to sit back and say, oh yeah, Brad Holmes should go and get this guy, Brad Holmes should go and get that guy, and it's like, you know what, just do what we need because that's what we're thinking. We have to understand something here. We're not in the building. We do not know what all is going on. And when a lot of these conversations were being had earlier in their offseason, we still had not signed guys like Goff, Sewell, Amon-Ra, St. Brown, and Decker, which after all that was tallied up, we had spent $500 million in brand new spending money on all 4 of those contracts. So it's like, okay, that's something we had to keep in mind here, is that obviously, the Lions had other plans, they had other obligations to take care of, and that's what they did when they spent all that money to go and get Goff, Sewell, St. Brown, and Decker under contract for the next 3 to 4 years. And then, on top of that, let's understand us as fans here. While Lions fans can state, hey, this player's better than this player, or that player's better than this one, and that's in terms of talent, we have to understand something here. Is the guy a team fit or a culture fit? Are they a scheme fit? And here's the reason why I can counter the argument for this whole devil's advocate here, because I want to provide one side and then provide the other. When it comes to in terms of the financial obligations, it comes in terms of the financial problem here. I understand the Lions just spent a literal ass ton of money. And you know what? That's definitely something you want to keep in consideration here, because money does not literally grow on trees, and you only have so much cap space. But I literally just checked Spot Rack. The Lions have, I think, either the 3rd or 4th most cap space right now. They have $40.7 million in cap space. I think we can spend a little extra money, don't you think? That's quite a lot of dinero to work with. And then, let's think about this in terms of the second point from the devil's advocate that I was talking about here. Okay, is it quite possible that we know if a guy is a scheme fit or not? Not really, because I'm going to be entirely honest. The average fan is not going to know how a player is going to fit within a certain scheme. We just simply don't have that kind of knowledge. And we can't really be truthful or accurate about how a player is going to be a scheme fit or not. We can say, oh, this guy played in this kind of a scheme or whatever, but is that going to be a true, accurate representation? Probably not. There's probably a little bit more to it than that. But whether or not a guy is a culture fit, that is definitely something Lions fans can understand and determine very easily, because it's like, listen, we know Dan Campbell's culture. We know the Lions' culture. And I'm going to say this right now. Most of the guys that I put out there, whether it was the quarterbacks or it was the edge rushers, I would perceive them to be culture fits. There's only 2 guys that I would be really, kind of like iffy on the fence on for that. But my whole point of the matter is this. Again, when you're going for a Super Bowl run, you want to try and get the best team you can possibly assemble. Well, I understand that the Lions are wanting to find guys that are culture fits. They want guys that fit their culture. But at some point, you have to ask yourself is, hey, are you willing to put up with a little bit of a headache to potentially get a guy that's a little bit better, even though he might not be a 100% total fit for your culture? Now, again, I'm not saying that that's what the Lions should have done. That is a very, very big open-ended question that, depending upon what perspective you're at, you might say absolutely not, or maybe you should consider it. I'm not saying one way or the other. It's just a question that people have to ask themselves. Are you willing to potentially deal with the headache of a much more talented player that might help you win versus, getting a less talented player that is a culture fit? It's one of those questions you have to ask yourself, and I think the Lions, for the most part, have stated they would much rather deal with guys that are less talented but are culture fits. But again, is that going to be enough to get you to a Super Bowl? That's the big what-if question on the back end of that. So my whole point of the matter is this. When we're keeping everything in perspective here, whether it's the backup quarterback position, whether it is in terms of the edge rushing position, the point of the matter is that the Lions' aspirations for a Super Bowl, it requires the absolute best that they can provide. And I'm going to be honest, what we have at those two positions is not, in my opinion, the best that we can provide. Let me just put it to you this way. The backup quarterback's job is to do two things. He's supposed to help the guy that's below him get better, and he's supposed to help the starting quarterback in front of him get better and ready for game day. I'm sorry, but Nate Sudfeld, I don't see having any ability to make Jared Goff a better quarterback for game day. And let's put it this way. Do you realistically trust Nate Sudfeld being the guy that's primarily helping Hooker develop? I don't think I would. Then we take a look at the edge rushing position. Okay, Marcus Davenport. We know the guy has talent. We know the guy can play. The problem is, can he stay healthy? We don't know if he's going to be able to stay healthy. That's part of the reason why the Lions gave him a 1-year prove-it deal to stay if he could stay healthy. And again, the odds are not really in his favor. So again, it's like when you have these two positions that may or may not have a huge importance on how the Lions go towards a Super Bowl, that then brings us into, okay, Brad Holmes, again, done an exemplary job with everything else with this roster, and I continue to say that. He has done an absolutely awesome job. But these are two really big holes that you should have gotten fixed much sooner ago. Again, we've been having backup quarterback problems now for the last 3 years. And freaking the edge rushing problem has been pretty much around since 2022. But yet, we're still having the same problems here. We're still having these big questions and no real answers. So again, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, Brad Holmes, you have the resources. You have $40.7 million worth of cap space. Use it. You have some draft capital. Use a low-round draft pick or another low-round player or whatever the case is. Go out and trade for somebody if need be. The whole point of the matter is that I know one of the biggest areas that Lions fans have had a problem they've seen in the past when it comes to Brad Holmes is they think that he's a little bit too cheap. I think you can't use that now considering all the money that we've spent this offseason, but it's like, listen, you have to stop using Band-Aids when it comes to these positions. You got to find better quality is what I'm getting down to here. And that's what I think a lot of Lions fans are starting to feel right now. They're feeling like, hey, great job everywhere else, but these two positions, they're really starting to look very glaring and very bad. We need to address them because we're not really seeing or hearing a whole lot out of them that's any good. That's the whole point of this episode. But anyway, folks, I just figured I'd make this episode really quick to start today. We'll see what happens later on in the day with the training camp practice and, observations and all that. But until that time, I just want to say thank you all for watching another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things. Like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. If by chance you subscribed in the past, forgot to do so at the time, or you just subscribed and not had a chance to do so, again, I want to also encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also want to encourage y'all, please, make sure you guys share this content with your Lions friends and family members. Share it here on YouTube, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, share it anywhere and everywhere you can. The more we can share it, the greater the channel has a reach, the greater the channel spreads, the more we're able to bring in people to watch the content. So again, share it with all your Lions friends and family members. And with that being said, to everybody, I hope you all enjoyed the content. I hope you all are having a great day. Hope you all got something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.